Welcome! Come in from the cold. Wherever you are right now, whatever this day has asked of you, whatever noise and light and motion filled the hours leading to this moment, you can set all of it down. Right here, right now. You are allowed to rest. Outside, the evening has given way to a quiet English autumn night. The kind of night that feels ancient and familiar all at once. Dark skies and heavy clouds, and the gentle, insistent sound of rain moving across rooftops and cobblestones and fields that stretch away into the dark. You don't need to be anywhere else tonight. You don't need to do anything more. There is only this. Imagine, if you will, that you have just stepped inside, out of the cold and the wet, out of the rushing world, and into something warmer, something older, something that moves at a pace the modern world has nearly forgotten. A steam train. A first-class compartment aboard a great English railway locomotive on a wet autumn night. The kind of train that exists now mostly in memory, in the amber glow of old photographs, in the yellowed pages of travel journals, in the stories your grandparents might have told about journeys taken long ago. Tonight, it is yours. So settle in, pull the covers a little closer, let your breathing slow. You are safe here, you are warm here, and the rain will carry you. The platform lights, tall iron lanterns with warm amber glass, cast pools of gold along the stone, and those pools shimmer and dance as the rain moves through them. You can smell it already. Rain on old stone. Coal smoke drifting lazily from somewhere further down the platform. The faint green and copper scent of wet iron on the tracks below. Other passengers move around you, quiet figures in dark coats, luggage in gloved hands, but their movements feel muffled and distant, as though you are already half inside a dream. The rain makes everything gentle. The rain softens all edges. And then, a sound. Not sudden, not sharp, a deep, low exhalation of steam rising from the great engine further down the platform. The locomotive breathes, and you feel it more than you hear it. A rumble that moves through the soles of your feet and settles somewhere in your chest, slow and steady as a heartbeat. The train is alive, and it is waiting for you. You climb the narrow steps, the carriage door swinging open with that particular sound. A heavy, satisfying click of brass and iron, the groan of old hinges, and you step inside. And the world changes. The compartment is small in the way that important things are always small. Intimate, complete. 6 seats in 2 rows facing one another, upholstered in deep burgundy. a fabric somewhere between velvet and wool that has spent decades being sat in and leaned against and slept upon, and has only grown softer for it. You run your fingers along the armrest and feel the faint impressions left by countless journeys. This seat has carried a great many lives. Tonight, it carries yours. The walls are dark, polished wood, mahogany or something close to it, and the wood glows in the light of the brass lamp mounted just above the window. That lamp is small and steady, its flame or its filament casting an amber warmth that reaches just far enough to make the compartment feel held, like the inside of a lantern, like a pocket of light carried through the dark. Above, a luggage rack of burnished brass, netted, slightly worn. Someone has already placed a leather case there, dark and travel-worn, its brass clasps catching the light. Beneath your feet, a narrow carpet in deep green and burgundy, its pattern almost lost to age and use. It muffles your steps completely. In here, footsteps are whispers. You take your seat, the window seat naturally, the best seat, the only seat on a night like this, and you look outside. The platform is still there beyond the glass, but the glass itself has already begun its quiet transformation. Raindrops land on the outer surface and are immediately caught by the physics of the window. They travel, they slow, they merge with one another. They trace long, wandering paths down toward the frame. And then new drops come, and the paths begin again. You watch one particular drop begin its journey at the top of the glass. It pauses, gathers, and then it moves, not quickly, not urgently, but with the slow, certain grace of something that has no reason to hurry. It finds the path of least resistance. It curves to the left. It hesitates at a bead of gathered moisture. And then the two drops meet, and the new drop, heavier now, fuller, slides the rest of the way with a slow satisfaction. Outside, through the rain, the lanterns blur and soften. The platform, the figures, the edges of buildings, all of it dissolves into something impressionistic, beautiful in its vagueness. And then, the sound beneath you changes. A slow, metallic breath, a deep gathering of energy. The platform begins to move. No, you begin to move. So gently at first that you almost question it. Is the train moving? Or is the platform drifting away? But yes, the wheels have found the rails. The engine has found its rhythm. And the compartment, your warm, amber-lit compartment, is now a vessel in motion, carrying you softly through the wet autumn dark, safe inside. The rhythm begins slowly, the way all good things begin. Click-clack, click-clack. The sound rises up through the floor, through the seat, through the wood and the wool and the glass, until it becomes something you feel as much as hear. A steady, patient percussion beneath everything else, the counterpoint to the rain. The train's own heartbeat, and now yours, and the two of them settling into something shared. Click-clack, click-clack. It is not exciting, this sound. It is not urgent. It is simply there, ancient and dependable, as reliable as the turning of seasons. Click-clack, click-clack. A knock at the compartment door. Light, unhurried. A steward in a dark uniform leans his head in, his expression warm and unhurried as everything else on this train. Tea? Of course, tea. He returns moments later with a tray, a white china pot worn smooth at the handle from years of pouring, trailing a thin coil of steam into the cool air. A cup and saucer with a blue pattern, something floral, something old. A small sugar bowl, a folded white cloth. He sets it on the narrow fold-out table by the window with the quiet precision of someone who has done this 10,000 times and has never once grown tired of it. The sound the cup makes on the saucer, that small porcelain ring, disappears almost immediately into the rhythm of the wheels in the rain. You wrap both hands around the cup. The warmth travels immediately, through your palms, along your fingers, up into your wrists and shoulders, and something deeper than that. The tea itself is strong and dark, with a softness that means it has been steeped with patience. You lift it close and the steam touches your face, warm and faintly earthy, faintly floral, and you close your eyes for just a moment. Rain on the window. Click-clack, click-clack. The amber light. The weight of the wool seat beneath you. The warmth between your hands. You are safe inside. Outside, the station has long since vanished. The town has fallen away. And now there is only the countryside, the great, dark, rain-soaked countryside of northern England rolling past in the night. You cannot see much of it. A suggestion of hills, their outlines barely distinguishable from the sky above. The occasional smear of light from a farmhouse window, present for a moment and then gone. A dark line of trees against a slightly lighter dark. A river catching the sparse light for just a second before the train sweeps past. The world is vast and dark and wet and quiet out there. And in here, in this small amber compartment with its polished wood and its steady lamp and its rhythm of wheels on rails, you are warm, you are still, you are held. With every mile, the train carries you a little further from wherever today began. With every mile, the weight of the ordinary world grows a little lighter. With every mile, the pull of sleep, that gentle, patient pull, grows a little stronger. You set the teacup down. You lean your head very slightly toward the window, the cool glass against your temple. Outside, the rain continues to trace its slow paths downward. The hills and fields move past in their unhurried procession. Click-clack, click-clack. The lamp above you has not changed. It has simply always been there, amber and steady, and it will be there still when you close your eyes. The warmth of it stays even with your eyes shut. A soft glow behind the eyelids. The seat holds you completely. The wool is soft against the back of your hands. The rain falls and the wheels turn, and the miles unspool themselves in the dark behind the train like a long, quiet breath being let go. Let the rhythm carry you now. Click-clack, click-clack. The rhythm of old iron and patience. The rhythm of a country moving gently through its night. The rhythm that has carried travelers like you, thousands of them, across 150 years of English winters and autumns and wet spring evenings, home or away or somewhere altogether new. Tonight it carries you here, just this moment, just the window and the rain and the warmth and the sound.
The countryside continues past. A stone bridge appears for a moment in the dark and disappears again. Below it, water, a river or a stream, running full with the evening's rain, visible only as a faint shimmer before the train has swept past and left it behind. Somewhere ahead, the engine breathes its long, slow exhalation of steam, and the sound drifts back along the carriages like a sigh. The locomotive exhales, the rain exhales, the dark fields exhale, and you exhale, slowly, completely. The train does not hurry. It has never hurried. It knows where it is going, and it knows the way, and it has learned, in whatever way that great iron things learn, that the journey itself is the point, not the arrival, not the destination on the paper ticket folded in your coat pocket. The journey, this moment, this window, this rain. With every mile, the body grows heavier. With every mile, the thoughts grow quieter, less insistent, less sharp at their edges. They soften, they drift. They become something less like thoughts and more like images, brief and mild and unbothered by meaning. A lantern, a stone wall, rain on a hillside, click-clack. A farmhouse window, lit and distant, click-clack. The amber glow of your compartment reflected in the glass, ghostly and warm, layered over the dark landscape outside. Click-clack, click-clack. There is nothing to do now but let the train carry you. Nothing to decide, nothing to remember, nothing to prepare for. Only this wood-paneled room, warm and dim and moving. Only the cup of tea cooling on the fold-out table. Only the rain sliding slowly down the glass, finding its path, unhurried and certain. Only the sound of wheels on iron rails, steady as breathing, steady as a heartbeat, steady as the very turning of the world. Safe inside. The hills outside have grown darker, or perhaps your eyes have grown softer to them. The rain has not stopped. It will not stop tonight, but it has settled into something completely itself, utterly natural. The sound of water finding its way home through the sky and onto this patient English earth. You are aware of your own weight, the solidity of the seat beneath you, the cool smoothness of the window beside you, the particular quality of warmth in this compartment, not the sharp warmth of forced heat, but something older and steadier, the warmth of enclosed space, the warmth of shelter. Outside, the autumn storm moves across the moors and the valleys and the dark fields. Inside, the rain slides slowly down the glass. The lamp holds its amber light, and the wheels continue their patient conversation with the rails. Click-clack, click-clack. You are safe inside. The rain continues to fall. Just the train moves on, mile after quiet mile through the dark and the rain. And as it does, it is worth knowing, if you are the kind of traveler who finds comfort in knowing, that you are not the first to make this journey, not nearly the first. The rails beneath you, the dark cut of earth they run through, the embankments edged with wet grass and old stone, all of this was laid down a very long time ago, by hands that are long since still. And the story of how it came to be is, in its way, as quiet and steady as the rain itself. The railways came to Yorkshire slowly, not all at once, not in some grand sweeping gesture, but piece by piece, line by line, the way a river carves its valley, over decades, over the long middle years of the 19th century, when the landscape of England was being quietly, irrevocably altered by iron and steam, and the patient labor of thousands of men who rose before dawn and went home after dark and left, as their legacy, these long straight lines running through the hills. The first true passenger railway in the north of England, the Stockton and Darlington line, opened in September of 1825, a Wednesday morning, drizzling as it happens. There is something fitting about that. Rain on the morning the railway was born in the north, as though the landscape itself was marking the occasion in its own quiet way. The locomotive that day, the Locomotion, built by George Stephenson, pulled a train of coal wagons and passenger carriages along 26 miles of track from Shildon to Stockton-on-Tees. Thousands came to watch. They stood in the fields on either side of the line, pressed together in the cold and the gray, watching this extraordinary thing move past them at nearly 15 miles an hour. 15 miles an hour. To stand in a field in 1825 and watch something move past you at 15 miles an hour. Something that was not a horse, not the wind, not a river in flood, must have been almost incomprehensible. And yet they watched, and the locomotive moved, and everything, very quietly, began to change. But it is not the great moments that stay with you on a night like this. It is the smaller ones, the quieter ones. By the 1840s and 1850s, the railway had spread deeper into Yorkshire, into the valleys and the moors and the places that had previously known only the slow company of pack horses and drovers. Villages that had existed for centuries in comfortable isolation suddenly found themselves connected to the next town, to the next county, to the whole vast machinery of Victorian England. For some, this was astonishing, exciting, the world made suddenly small and knowable. For others, it was simply a practical thing, a better way to get the wool to market, a faster way to send a letter or a parcel or a son off to his first position in the city. And for some, those who lived closest to the new lines, in the farms and cottages set just back from the embankments, it became something else entirely. Something woven into the ordinary rhythm of their days, the sound of the morning train, the distant whistle at 6:30, reliable as a church bell. The plume of white steam visible above the tree line from the kitchen window, rising and dissolving and rising again. The particular quality of stillness that fell over the valley and the gaps between trains, when the only sound was wind through the heather and the occasional far-off bleat of a sheep on the high moor. There is a village. It sits some miles to the east of the line you are riding now, tucked into a fold of the moors, whose name appears in the old railway records simply as a request stop. A place so small, so unhurried in its existence, that the train did not pause there on any fixed schedule. Passengers who wished to alight there would inform the guard at the start of their journey, and the guard would remember, and when the moment came, the train would slow its breathing and stop, just briefly, just long enough. The platform there was barely a platform at all, a length of stone just wide enough to step down onto, running alongside the track for perhaps 30 yards. A small wooden shelter at one end, painted dark green, its paint always a little weathered by the time the next coat was applied. And at that shelter, in the early years of the line, there was said to be a stationmaster, though that is too grand a title perhaps for what he was. A keeper, a tender of the small flame of that place. His name does not survive in any record that matters, but the logbooks mention him, the keeper at the Eastern Halt, through the 1860s and into the 1870s, in the handwriting of various guards and inspectors passing through. Lamp lit, platform clear, one passenger alighted. Lamp lit, platform clear, no passengers. Lamp lit, platform clear, one parcel received for the village. Always lamp lit. But that story belongs properly to segment 3, and we shall return to it in its own good time. For now, for this rainy mile, this warm compartment, this steady rhythm of wheels, let us speak instead of the moors themselves, of the landscape that surrounds these lines, of the particular character of the country you are moving through. Yorkshire is not a gentle landscape. It does not make itself easy or soft or immediately welcoming. It is a place of strong opinions and long memories, of wide skies and sudden weather, of stone walls that have stood in the same place for 500 years and intend to stand for 500 more. But at night, in the rain, from the window of a warm train, it becomes something else. The harshness softens, the edges dissolve. What remains is something vast and dark and quietly magnificent. The moors rolling away into the distance like the surface of a slow sea. The sky above them, low with cloud, heavy with rain, pressing down gently on the world, making everything feel closer, more held. And through this landscape the railway runs, cutting through the hills where the hills allowed it, tunneling through where they did not, crossing the valleys on great stone viaducts that stand even now as some of the most extraordinary things human hands have ever made. Arched in pale stone, carrying the line high above the rivers and the trees, tall enough that in certain weather the fog closes in below and the train crosses through the cloud itself. There is a viaduct not far from the line you are traveling now that was built in the early 1850s. 24 arches of local limestone, each one a perfect curve, carrying the railway 100 feet above a wooded valley below. When it was first proposed, the local landowners protested. The railway company negotiated. Compromises were made about the precise placement of the piers, about the planting of trees to soften the view from certain angles, about the color of the stonework in relation to the surrounding hills.
And then it was built, and then the trees grew up around it. And now, 170 years later, it sits in the valley as though it has always been there, as though the valley itself produced it, the way it produces limestone outcroppings and ancient oaks. Local school children draw it. Painters come from considerable distances to stand in the valley and look up at it. When the morning mist fills the valley and only the tops of the arches are visible above the white, it looks, it is said, not unlike a row of standing stones. Ancient, given. The railway brought other things with it, as great changes always do. It brought the excursion train, the day trip, which was a genuinely new idea in the 1840s. Before the railway, travel was slow and expensive and largely the province of those who could afford it. After the railway, a working family in Bradford or Leeds could board a train on a summer Saturday morning and be at the seaside by noon. The seaside, the actual seaside, Scarborough or Whitby or Filey. Towns that had previously been as remote as foreign countries to most of the inland population of Yorkshire. The railway brought them there, thousands of them, families with paper packages of sandwiches and children in their good coats, standing on the promenade at Scarborough and looking out at the grey North Sea with an expression of pure, uncomplicated wonder. Thomas Cook, that famous arranger of journeys, ran his first commercial excursion in 1841, a temperance meeting in Loughborough, as it happens. 11 miles of railway and 570 passengers and a band playing on the platform at the other end. And from that modest beginning, the whole vast idea of the package tour was born. The organized journey, the ticket that included everything. The sense that travel, distant, foreign, exciting travel, was something available not just to the wealthy but to anyone patient enough to save for it. The railway democratized wonder. But not all the stories of the Yorkshire railways are stories of progress and excursions and the widening of the possible. Some of them are quieter than that, more local, more particular. In the moorland parishes connected by the line, there grew, over the decades following the railway's arrival, a body of folklore specific to the trains themselves. Not ghost stories, precisely. Not tales of horror or dramatic appearances, but something gentler, something that belonged to the long winter evenings in farmhouses set close to the line, when the fire was burning and the children were listening. Tales of the lantern lights. On certain nights, nights like this one, when the moor was heavy with rain and the visibility beyond the window of your farmhouse was no more than a few yards, people claimed to see lights moving along the hillsides, not along the railway line itself, but above it, up on the high ground where the sheep paths ran and the old drovers' roads had existed for centuries before the railway came. Small lights, single lights, moving slowly, steadily, in a direction that had no obvious purpose. The practical explanation, offered by those who preferred their countryside explainable, was simply that these were lanterns carried by farmers checking on late sheep, or by shepherds making their rounds, or by the occasional traveler taking a shortcut across the moor on a night when the road was deep in mud. And that explanation is almost certainly correct. Almost. But the other explanation, the one that traveled from farmhouse to farmhouse over the years, that was told with the particular care reserved for things that might or might not be true, was this: the lights were travelers, not living ones, but the gentle, wandering souls of those who had, for one reason or another, arrived at a station that no longer existed. Passengers whose lines had been discontinued, who had alighted at a halt that was subsequently closed, and found themselves on a platform that no longer appeared on any map, waiting for a train that would never come. And so they walked, slowly, patiently, across the high moor, lantern in hand, making their way home by the old roads that predated the railway by 1,000 years. It is a gentle sort of haunting, if it is one at all. No clanking chains, no cold presences, no moments of terrible revelation, only a light moving steadily through the rain on the dark hillside, moving at the pace of someone who has accepted that the journey is long and has decided, in some deep and quiet place, to simply walk it. There is something in that image that is not frightening at all, something that is, in its way, rather peaceful. The moorland villages themselves had their own particular relationship with the railway. Each halt along the line developed its own character, its own small rituals, its own cast of regulars, its own particular flavor of ordinary life lived alongside the rhythm of the trains. At one station, a woman named Mrs. Hartley kept a small refreshment room on the platform for 31 years. She made tea and sold it through a hatch, and on cold mornings the guards would stop their watches for 30 seconds longer than strictly necessary so that passengers could take a cup. She knew every guard by name. She knew the regulars, the mill managers who took the early train to Bradford, the school teachers who came home on the 5 o'clock, by their particular habits and preferences. 2 sugars, no milk. The newspaper folded to the crossword. She retired in 1907, and the refreshment room closed with her, and the station thereafter had a quality. Certain travelers noted it, without being entirely able to explain it, of being slightly less inhabited than it had been before. At another station, further east, a stationmaster of the 1880s kept an unofficial garden along the platform edge. Roses, mostly, and in summer, travelers arriving at that station were met with the sight of deep red and cream-white blooms climbing along the iron railing, the smell of them drifting into the carriages as the train slowed and stopped. He was told once by a regional inspector that the garden was not strictly within the remit of his position. He thanked the inspector politely, and the garden continued. His roses are mentioned warmly in at least 3 separate memoirs of Yorkshire travel from that era. And here, in the dark and the rain, those distances of time feel smaller than they should. Not frightening, not strange, simply present. A gentle companionship, the sense that this train has always been moving through this night, and always will be. That the travelers who came before left something of themselves in the upholstery and the polished wood and the amber light, the way objects absorb the warmth of the hands that have touched them over the years. Safe inside, the rain falls, the wheels turn. Outside, somewhere in the dark, if you were standing on the hillside rather than riding past it, you might, on a night like this, see a light, small, steady, moving, making its patient way along the high ground above the line. You would not be afraid of it. You would watch it for a moment, that small amber point in all that darkness and rain. And then you would turn up your collar and continue home, and by morning you would remember it only as a comfortable thing. A traveler on the moor, making their way, as travelers do. The train moves on through the dark, and somewhere behind you now, several miles back along the rain-soaked line, there is a station you passed without stopping. You may not have noticed it. A brief brightening of the window, a platform edge catching the light for just a moment before the train swept past and left it in the dark again. A small station, quiet, set back slightly from the nearest village, the way some of these moorland halts were, as though the railway, in plotting its course, had been too polite to disturb the village directly and had stopped just short, out of courtesy. The platform is empty at this hour. It usually is, but the lamp is lit. It is always lit. The station has a name, a short, plain name, the kind that belongs to a place that never needed to announce itself, but we need not use it here. It is enough to know that it exists, that it has existed on this same stretch of moorland line for the better part of 160 years. In that time, it has had many station masters, a long succession of them, each one inheriting the same small duties, the same logbook with its ruled columns, the same iron stove in the waiting room that requires a particular and patient technique to light on cold mornings. But tonight, we are concerned with only one of them, the one the old records call simply, in the handwriting of a regional inspector making his rounds in the autumn of 1887, Mr. E. His full name appears nowhere in the surviving documents. Only the initial, only E. The waiting room at the station is small. For wooden benches, 2 on each side, their surfaces worn to a soft smoothness by decades of coats and journeys. A window overlooking the platform, its glass slightly warped in the old way, so that the lamp outside bends and wavers when seen through it, as though breathing. An iron stove in the corner, lit tonight, as it is every night between September and April. The fuel is kept in a small lean-to shed attached to the back of the building. Mr. E fills it himself every third day, from the coal delivery left at the platform end. On the wall above the stove, a framed timetable. The glass is slightly foxed at the corners. The timetable itself is several years out of date, but no one has replaced it, and Mr. E has not asked them to. He finds it, in some way he could not explain, comforting. On the narrow desk beside the window, the stationmaster's desk, with its single deep drawer and its surface of worn green leather, sits the logbook. The logbook is an ordinary thing. A cloth-bound ledger, dark blue, the corners rubbed pale. Inside, columns ruled in faint red ink. Date, time of arrival, time of departure, passengers alighting, passengers boarding, parcels received, parcels dispatched, remarks. The remarks column is narrow. It was designed for brief, practical observations. Delay due to weather. Track inspection required. Signal lamp requires attention. Mr. E uses it for these things naturally, but he also uses it occasionally for other things. Small things. Things that do not fit neatly into the other columns, but that seem to him worth recording. the quality of the evening light on a particular October dusk, the behavior of the moorland birds in the hour before a storm, the precise sound, difficult to describe but worth attempting, of the last train of the night departing the station and the silence that follows it. He is not a poetic man, Mr. E. He would not describe himself as one, but he is an attentive one. Tonight he sits at his desk in the lamplit waiting room, the stove ticking quietly beside him, the rain steady against the window, and he opens the logbook to the current page. The last train of the evening has already passed. There is one more before midnight, a slow goods train that does not stop here but whose passage he is required to note. After that, nothing until the early morning. He uncaps his pen. He writes the date. He writes the time. He writes, rain, moderate. Wind from the northeast. Platform lamp burning well. Then he pauses. In the remarks column, after a moment, he writes, quiet evening. Moorland in good order. No unusual occurrences. He looks at what he has written. Then, below it, in slightly smaller handwriting, he adds, the rain sounds different tonight. Slower, perhaps, or I am simply listening more carefully than usual. He closes the logbook. It is the logbook that first drew the attention of a railway archivist. Many decades later, the archivist, a quiet, methodical woman working through a collection of uncatalogued records from rural Yorkshire stations, came across Mr. E's logbook in a cardboard box, unmarked, on a shelf in a storeroom that had not been properly sorted since the 1960s. She opened it expecting the usual, columns of arrivals and departures, weather notes, routine maintenance observations. She found all of those things, but she also found the remarks column. Over the years covered by the logbook, 7 years from 1881 to 1888, the remarks column grew gradually longer, more frequent, more particular in its observations. The archivist spent 2 full afternoons reading it. She told a colleague afterward that it was one of the strangest and most quietly affecting documents she had encountered in 30 years of archival work. Her colleague asked what was strange about it. She thought for a moment and then said, nothing dramatic, nothing alarming, only a name. The name appears first in the logbook in November of 1882. In the remarks column, on a Wednesday evening in the 3rd week of the month, Mr. E has written, passenger for the 614 did not board. A woman waited the full duration of the stop, stood quite still on the platform. When I looked again, she was gone. Name unknown. Unremarkable on its own. Passengers miss trains. Passengers change their minds. But the name appears again. 6 weeks later, in January of 1883, the woman from November was on the platform this evening. Did not board the 614 again. Standing at the far end, near the elm tree, did not approach the ticket hatch. I called out, she did not respond. Gone before I could inquire further. And then again in March, she was here tonight. I have begun, without knowing why, to think of her as Marin. I do not know where the name comes from. It is not a local name. And from that point on, throughout the remaining years of the logbook, she is always Marin. Mr. E never describes her in great detail. He is not that kind of writer. But from the entries, over the years, certain things accumulate. She is always on the platform in the evening, never in daylight. Always near the elm tree at the far end. Always still, very still, in the way of someone who is not waiting impatiently but waiting in the manner of someone who has made a complete peace with waiting. She is always gone before he can reach her. He is not, it is clear from the entries, frightened. He is simply curious. And after curiosity, something gentler. Something that is, perhaps, a kind of companionship. In 1886, he writes, "Marin on the platform again this evening. The 6:14 late by 8 minutes. I found myself hoping she would still be there when it arrived. She was not, but the elm tree looked well. First leaves coming. And in the autumn of 1887, the last mention, Marin this evening, for the first time in several months. The rain was heavy and I could not see her clearly, only her outline and the stillness of it. I did not call out. I simply lit the lamp a little earlier than usual, so the platform would be bright for her. After that entry, her name does not appear again. The archivist searched the available records for anything that might explain the name. Parish registers, census documents, old passenger lists from the line for whatever years survived. She found one entry, only one, that gave her pause. In a passenger complaint log from 1879, 2 years before the logbook begins, a brief note in the stationmaster's hand of that time. A different stationmaster, Mr. E's predecessor. A woman traveling alone became distressed at this station this evening. Could not be assisted. Asked only about a train that does not stop here. Below this, a single additional note, added later in different ink. Name given as Marin H. That is all. No further record. No explanation of what train she sought, or where she was going, or whether she found her way. The archivist noted the entry carefully in her catalog. She did not offer a conclusion. There isn't one to offer, really. Only the name recurring. Only the lamp always lit. Only the platform, kept clear and bright on the off chance that someone standing at the far end beneath the elm tree might, one evening, decide to board. But we have moved ahead of ourselves. We are still in the waiting room with Mr. E on his rainy evening in the 1880s, long before the archivist and the cardboard box and the careful cataloging of things that time almost forgot. He has closed the logbook. He is sitting now in the chair beside the stove. Not the desk chair, but a small armchair he brought from home some years ago, its cushion restuffed once and then again, its fabric a faded green that might once have been something brighter. He has a cup of tea. The stove ticks. The rain falls. Outside, the platform lamp burns steady in the wet air, its light catching the surface of the puddles forming along the platform edge, each raindrop making a brief, perfect circle that expands and vanishes and is replaced by another. He does not look at the platform. He simply sits. There is something in the quality of his stillness, as though the room itself has taken a breath and is holding it gently, that is utterly, completely restful. In half an hour, the goods train will pass through. He will hear it before he sees it. The low vibration first, traveling through the earth and into the floor of the waiting room, a feeling more than a sound. Then the lamp outside will shudder very slightly in its bracket. Then the sound itself will arrive, the deep, rolling thunder of a heavy train at speed, and the windows will rattle briefly and the logbook on the desk will shift an inch toward the edge, as it always does, and he will note the time and the passage in the appropriate column. And then the sound will diminish, will travel away down the line, into the dark and the rain southward, and the silence will return. That silence, the particular silence that follows the passage of a goods train at night, is one of the things he wrote about in the remarks column. In 1884, on a November evening much like this one, he wrote, "The silence after the night freight is different from other silences. It is as though the train takes something with it when it goes, some quality of the air, some tension in the night, and what remains is the purest quiet I know. Warmer than the quiet before, more complete." He underlined the word complete. Then, below it, the rain sounds louder afterward, more present, as though it has been waiting for the train to pass so that it can properly be heard. You are still on the train, of course. Your train, the warm compartment, the amber lamp, the burgundy upholstery. You have traveled some considerable distance from that small station now. Its platform lamp, that small point of steady amber in the rain, has long since passed beyond the curve of the line and out of sight. But it is still burning. That much, that much has always been true. The logbook at that station runs until 1888, and then a new one begins, a different hand, a different stationmaster, and the remarks column returns to its intended purpose. Brief, practical, unremarkable. Mr. E retired in the spring of that year. The records do not say where he went, whether he returned to a family somewhere or took rooms in a nearby town or simply, as some people do, made himself quietly comfortable in a place that suited him and was not heard from again. The archivist, when she finished reading his logbook, sat for a moment in the silence of the storeroom. Then she turned to the front cover and wrote his name, or the initial of it, the only name she had, on the catalog label, E, and filed it carefully in a place where it would be easy to find. Outside the train, the rain falls. The moors extend away into the darkness. Somewhere, on a platform that most timetables have long since stopped mentioning, a lamp burns. Steady, patient, bright. The train carries you on. The rhythm of the wheels is slower now, or perhaps it only seems slower. Perhaps your own breathing has slowed to meet it, and the two of them, the wheels and your breath, have settled into something shared and easy. Click-clack, click-clack. The window beside you holds its steady gallery of raindrops, each one beginning its journey at the top of the glass, tracing its slow, particular path downward. Each one unhurried, each one complete in itself. The lamp above burns amber. The seat holds you, The carriage is warm with the warmth of enclosed space, of wool and old wood, of a small world made comfortable against the larger, wetter world outside. Safe inside. Somewhere in the miles behind you, a waiting room, a stove that ticks, a logbook with a narrow remarks column filled with the careful observations of a man who paid close attention to things that most people walked past without noticing. The quality of silence after a night freight, the first leaves on the elm tree, the rain sounding different, slower perhaps, or simply listen to more carefully than usual. The train is slowing, not stopping, not yet, but easing. The rhythm of the wheels has shifted almost imperceptibly, from the steady, confident click-clack of open countryside to something slightly softer, slightly more deliberate. The engine ahead is breathing differently. You can feel it if you are paying the kind of quiet attention that comes naturally at this hour, in this warmth, after this many miles of dark and rain. A change is coming, not an abrupt one, not an exciting one, simply the next thing, the warm thing waiting at the end of the line. But before that, before arrival, there is one more thing to tell you about. One of the great forgotten pleasures of rail travel in its golden age. Something that has almost entirely vanished from the modern world, and whose absence, once you know about it, feels like a small and particular loss. The dining car. The railway dining car was, in its heyday, one of the most civilized inventions the 19th century produced, which is saying something given the competition. It appeared on British trains from the 1870s onward, a dedicated carriage, set slightly apart from the rest of the train, given over entirely to the business of eating well while moving through the countryside at speed. The earliest ones were modest affairs, a narrow galley kitchen at one end, a row of tables along each side, white tablecloths that the kitchen staff were endlessly, heroically battling to keep presentable against the swaying of the carriage. But by the turn of the century, by the great Edwardian era of railway travel, the dining car had become something extraordinary. mahogany paneling, etched glass lampshades, carpets in deep wine red, tables laid with the kind of precision that would not have been out of place in the finest London hotel. Starched white linen, silver cutlery, crystal glasses that caught the lamplight and scattered it in small, warm constellations across the ceiling. And outside the windows of all this quiet splendor, the rain-dark countryside rolling past. Imagine, for a moment, that you have made your way along the swaying corridor to the dining car. The walk itself is part of the pleasure, the narrow passage between carriages, the brief cold rush of air and the sound of the wheels suddenly loud and unfiltered before the next door closes behind you and the warmth returns. And then you are inside. A steward in a white jacket meets you at the entrance with the particular unhurried courtesy of someone who understands that a good meal cannot be rushed and has no intention of allowing it to be. He shows you to a table by the window. The tablecloth is white and stiffly pressed, its surface cool and smooth under your fingertips. The cutlery is heavy silver, genuinely heavy, the kind that has weight and intention to it, that makes the act of lifting a spoon feel considered and worthwhile. A small vase at the center of the table holds 2 flowers. Something simple, something that nods toward the season without making a fuss about it. Outside your window, rain on glass, dark hills, the occasional blur of a farmhouse light, the whole familiar, beautiful dark of a rainy English night. And you are inside at a white-clothed table about to be fed. There are few more complete feelings in the world than this one. The menu arrives, a card in a leather folder, the evening's offerings written out in a careful hand. Soup to begin. On a night like this, there is always soup. A thick, dark broth, oxtail perhaps, or a rich brown onion. The kind of soup that has been simmering since early afternoon and has grown, in that long, slow time, into something deep and serious and entirely satisfying. It arrives in a wide, shallow bowl. The steam rises from it in a single slow column that drifts and disperses in the warmth of the carriage. You lift the spoon. There is something about soup on a moving train in the rain that cannot be improved upon. The warmth of it spreads from your mouth downward, through your chest, into your hands, into the places in your body that have been holding the cold of the evening without quite realizing it. You set the spoon down for a moment. You look out at the rain on the window. The hills beyond are invisible now, lost in the dark and the weather. There is only the glass, and the rain on the glass, and your own reflection looking back at you, softened by the amber light, made gentle by it, made, perhaps, more restful than you feel from the inside. You look well in this light. You look like someone who has been traveling a long time and has finally, properly, arrived at warmth. The great railway companies of Victorian and Edwardian Britain understood something that the modern world has largely forgotten. That a journey is not simply a means of getting from one place to another. That the time spent in transit is not dead time, not wasted time, not time to be hurried through or filled with distraction. It is its own time, its own particular quality of living. The Midland Railway, one of the grandest of the Victorian companies, was famous for the quality of its passenger experience. Its carriages were wider than the competition. Its upholstery was softer. Its dining cars were spoken of with genuine warmth in the travel writing of the period. The Great Western Railway had its own particular character, something that came, perhaps, from the landscape it served. The rolling green counties of the west of England, the long approach to Cornwall, the wide tidal estuaries seen from the viaducts near Plymouth. Its dining cars served cream teas in the afternoon, and the cream was from Devon, and the jam was from somewhere specific and knowable, and the whole thing had a quality of rightness that its passengers remembered for the rest of their lives. And the London and North Eastern Railway, the line that ran north through Yorkshire and into Scotland, served kippers at breakfast. Proper kippers, on white china, with brown toast, at a table by the window while the North Sea appeared and disappeared in the morning mist beyond the glass. These things mattered. These things were remembered. But we are getting ahead of ourselves again. It is still evening, still rainy, still this warm and amber-lit journey through the dark. The main course has arrived. Something roasted. Something that has been cooking slowly since afternoon in the kitchen car behind you. Tended by someone who understood that slow cooking and fast travel are not contradictions but complements. The plate is warm against your hands when you lift it slightly to appreciate the heat of it. The gravy is dark and serious. The vegetables alongside are soft in the way that properly cooked vegetables become soft. Not collapsed, not defeated, but yielded. Become something else, something better. The steward refills your water glass without being asked. Outside, the rain intensifies briefly, a heavier burst passing through, and the sound of it on the dining car roof is different from the sound in the compartment. More present, more surrounding, as though the rain is making itself known. You look up at the ceiling for a moment, the paneled mahogany, the etched glass lamp above your table, the warm amber of its light, and then back down at your plate. The rain passes, softens again, returns to its familiar, patient rhythm. You continue eating, slowly, with no reason to hurry. There is nowhere else to be. There is nothing else to do. Only this. The station hotels of Victorian Britain deserve a chapter of their own. Several of them have chapters of their own, in fact, written by travelers who arrived at a great railway terminus late on a rainy evening and found waiting for them, directly connected to the station, often accessible without ever stepping back outside. A hotel of extraordinary grandeur and warmth. The Midland Hotel in Manchester, the Great Western Royal Hotel at Paddington, the North British Hotel in Edinburgh, its turrets visible from the train as you approach through the evening mist. The Station Hotel in York, set just inside the city walls, its red brick glowing in the lamplight of the station forecourt. These were not incidental buildings. They were not afterthoughts. They were designed to be the first and last impression of the railway, the welcome and the farewell, the proof that the railway was not merely a mechanical convenience but an entire civilization of travel. Their lobbies were cathedral-like. High ceilings, marble floors, brass fittings that caught the light from a dozen sources at once. Porters moved through them with the quiet efficiency of people who understood that weary travelers needed things done without being asked twice. The check-in desk was polished mahogany. The key to your room was a heavy, satisfying thing on a brass fob. And the room itself warm, waiting, the curtains already drawn against the rain outside, was everything a long journey deserved at its end. Imagine arriving at one of these hotels on a night like tonight. The train pulling into the great arched terminus, the roof of iron and glass high above, the sound of the locomotive echoing back from all that space, the platform lights long and amber in the wet air, steam rising from the engine and drifting upward into the vault of the station roof. You step down onto the platform. The air is cooler here, touched by the damp from outside. But the hotel, its entrance directly ahead, its lobby visible through the glass doors, warm and bright and still, is only 40 steps away. You cross the lobby. The marble floor is cool and solid underfoot. The ceiling rises away above you. Somewhere, a piano very quietly, playing something unhurried in a room off to the left. The sound of it drifts through the lobby like smoke, like the scent of something good being cooked somewhere nearby. The porter takes your luggage without ceremony and with complete reliability. It will be in your room before you are. You take the key. You take the lift. A small, panel thing with a brass gate and an operator in a dark uniform who asks what floor and presses the button with the certainty of someone who has pressed it 10,000 times. The corridor on your floor is quiet, carpeted. The wall lamps are turned low for the evening. Your door is the third on the left. The room is everything a long rainy journey deserves. Not enormous. These rooms were rarely enormous, but complete the way that good small spaces are complete, with a sense that everything necessary is present and everything unnecessary has been quietly removed. A bed of considerable seriousness. White linen turned down at one corner. Pillows of a depth and softness suggesting genuine understanding of what pillows are for. A wool blanket folded at the foot, dark green, substantial, the kind of blanket that has weight to it when you pull it over you and becomes immediately an argument for staying exactly where you are. A fireplace, and in it, a fire already laid and burning, small and steady, its light moving warmly across the ceiling, across the dark wooden floor, across the white of the turned-down bed. The curtains are heavy velvet, dark red, or something close to it, and they are drawn against the night. But you can hear, even through their weight and the walls of the hotel and the glass of the windows, the rain. Still falling, still patient, still keeping its faithful company with the rooftops and the cobblestones and the dark streets of this rainy English city. You cross to the window and part the curtain just slightly. Below, the station forecourt, lamplight on wet stone, a cab horse standing very still in the rain, its driver wrapped in a dark coat on the box, waiting. The distant sound of the city, muffled by weather. You let the curtain fall back. You turn toward the fire. There is a chair by the fireplace. Of course there is. A deep armchair in dark leather, its surface warm from the fire, with a small table beside it holding a tray, a pot of tea, a cup and saucer, a small plate with 2 shortbread biscuits wrapped in a fold of wax paper. Someone has thought of everything. You sit. The fire makes its small, private sounds, the tick and settle of coals, the occasional soft collapse of a log finding its new position. The light it casts is the warmest light there is, orange and alive, moving always, never still, making everything it touches look like something from an old painting, something preserved in amber. The tea is still hot. You pour it carefully, listening to the sound of it filling the cup, that particular small music, and then you wrap both hands around the cup and you sit back and you feel, with the completeness of someone who has earned it, the warmth of the fire on your face. The rain on the windows of the hotel is quieter than the rain on the train. More distant, the walls of this old building hold it at a comfortable remove. Present enough to hear, present enough to appreciate, but no longer able to touch you. You are inside, completely inside, safe inside. Outside, the city continues in its rainy evening. Somewhere, a clock tower strikes the hour. The sound of it arrives softly through the curtains. 1 note, 2 notes, a counted number that barely registers before it fades back into the rain and the fire and the quiet of this room. It doesn't matter what hour it is. Not anymore. Not tonight. You think of the journey, the platform at dusk, with its amber lanterns and its smell of rain on old stone, the compartment warm and dim, and the tea that arrived without being asked for twice, the click-clack of wheels on rails, steady as a heartbeat, steady as breathing, the dark moors rolling past in the rain, the small stations drifting by, their brief platforms, their lit lamps, their quality of lives being quietly lived alongside the line, the logbook with its narrow remarks column, the lamp that is always lit, Marin standing very still beneath the elm tree at the far end of the platform. These things settle in you now gently, without weight, without the sharpness that thoughts usually carry. They have become something softer than thoughts, more like the images that arrive in the space between waking and sleep, when the mind begins its slow release of the day. You do not hold them, you let them pass, like countryside scene from a moving train, like rain on a window. The fire has settled lower. It no longer crackles. It simply burns, steadily, quietly, the coals glowing a deep, pulsing amber that breathes very slowly, like something sleeping. The teacup is empty. The shortbread is gone. At some point, you are not entirely sure when you moved from the chair to the bed. The wool blanket is over you now. The pillow is exactly as deep as it promised to be. The firelight moves on the ceiling. The rain is still there. It has not stopped, and it will not stop tonight. It is the kind of rain that has settled into the city for the long hours of darkness. Patient, purposeful, doing the quiet work that rain does. Filling the gutters, darkening the stone, running in thin rivers along the edges of the cobbled streets below. It falls on the station roof, on the great arched glass and iron vault where the trains sleep. It falls on the platform, on the lamps still burning in the empty station. It falls on the line, northward, back through the countryside. Back through the valleys and over the viaducts and past the dark moorland hills. It falls on a small platform somewhere out in the moors, on an elm tree, bare now in the autumn, on a lamp burning steady in the wet air. Safe inside. You are warm now, completely warm in the way that takes a long journey to arrive at. Not just the surface warmth of being indoors, but the deeper kind. The kind that reaches the bones. The kind that loosens the shoulders and softens the jaw and lets the hands lie open, palms upward, with nothing in them and nothing required of them. The ceiling above you is still touched by the dying fire. The rain is still on the windows. These two things, the warmth and the rain, have been with you all evening. And they will still be here just as they are when you have gone somewhere the narrative cannot follow. Let the breath slow now. There is nothing left to do. The journey has been made. The miles are behind you. The tea has been drunk. The fire has burned low. The blanket is over you. And the rain is keeping its faithful watch on the other side of the glass. You have been a long way tonight, through rain and dark and the quiet countryside of a nation sleeping, through history that settled gently into you, the way old things settle, without announcement, without urgency, becoming simply part of what you know. You have sat in a first-class compartment with brass lamps burning and tea cooling on the fold-out table. You have passed through villages where people once stood at farmhouse windows and watched the lights of the railway move through the dark. You have traveled the same rails as the mill manager and the schoolteacher and the family going to the sea and the young man going somewhere for the very first time. And you have read, in a narrow remarks column in a cloth-bound ledger, the careful observations of a man who understood that the most important things are often the smallest ones. The quality of silence, the sound of rain, slower tonight, the lamp lit early so the platform would be bright. These things are yours now, carried quietly, requiring nothing. The fire breathes its last amber breath. The rain falls on the roof of the hotel and the roof of the station and the roof of every sleeping house in this old rainy city. And further, far out along the line, the rain falls on the moors, on the stone walls and the heather and the dark swollen streams running fast with the evening's water. On viaducts where no train passes now, their pale stone arches standing in the dark as they have stood for 170 years, needing no acknowledgement, asking nothing. on a small platform, on a lamp burning in the wet air, on an elm tree in the dark. The rain falls. It has always fallen. It will still be falling when you wake, if you wake, into a gray and gentle Yorkshire morning, the world outside washed clean, the city quiet in the way of early hours, the station just visible from your window, its great roof glowing softly with the first gray light. But that is morning, and morning is a long, long way away. For now there is only this, the warmth beneath the blanket, the slow movement of firelight on a ceiling that is growing stiller, stiller, the rain on the glass, patient and rhythmic and complete. You do not need to hold on to anything. You do not need to remember any of it. The train will carry it. The rails will hold it. The rain will keep it. The way rain keeps everything it falls on. The way stone holds the impression of water long after the water has moved on. It will all be here when you come back to it. Every mile of it. Every lamp. Every cup of tea gone cold on a fold-out table while the dark countryside rolled past outside. For now, only breathing, the slow, even breath of someone who has arrived somewhere warm, the breath of someone who is, right now, in this moment, entirely safe. The fire is only embers now, small and deep and glowing. The rain is on the window. The rain is always on the window. Sleep